We will begin our meeting with the invocation by the Father Andrew Buchanan, Galilee Episcopal Church. If he'd come forward and do the invocation, and everyone remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Your Honor, we haven't been able to find him, so Reverend Vice Mayor may.
Reverend Vice Mayor.
The most reverend.
Most Reverend.
All right, let's bow our heads, folks. Dear Heavenly Father, we know that you're always near us and beside us in all that we do. Be with us this evening as we consider the affairs of our great city. Guide us and direct us in all that we do and what we say. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Do I have a motion for the certification of the closed session?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have certified the closed session in accordance with Motion 3.
Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes for the informal and formal sessions of February 24, 2015?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have approved minutes as
Folks, I am going to interrupt the meeting for a couple of things if I can. I'd like to ask Kit Chope or Gator. Gator, will you come forward, please? One of the things I think y'all have heard me say numerous times, one of the greatest honors of being mayor of this city is making great friends with the friends in the military. And Kit Chope is another fine example. I consider him a dear friend, obviously a great leader for our country, and a great partner for our city. Kit, has just been an absolute honor with you at the helm at Oceana. We've done some great things together because we find, we all can't do everything by ourselves, but when we partner, we do really great things. I'm delighted to let you know that this fellow is going to stay in town upon retirement, and he's leaving CO of Oceana and also retiring the 6th, I believe, of this month. And he has just, when I read this, you'll see he has served our country very, very well, and it's an absolute honor to have someone like you here with us tonight. And I'd like to read this resolution. Whereas Captain Christopher Gator Chope graduated from the Citadel in 1989 as a distinguished naval graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree in international politics and military affairs. He was designated a naval officer in August 1990 and joined the Black Panthers of VA 35 in October 1991. He went on to fly F-14 Tomcats, including a tour of the world-famous Red Rippers of Fighter Squadron 11 in March 2000. Whereas following his tour at VF-11, Captain Chope attended the Naval War College, where he earned a Master of Arts degree in National Security and Strategic Studies. He worked at the United States Special Operations Command as Chief Special Technical Operations Branch. Whereas in January 2006, Captain Chope transitioned to the FA-18F Super Hornet and served as Executive Officer in Strike Fighter Squadron 122 until joining the Fighting Redcocks of Strike Fighter Squadron 22 as Executive Officer. He then served as the Navy Personnel Command in Millington, Tennessee, and in March 2012 became Executive Officer of Naval Air Station Oceana. Whereas Captain Chope has accumulated over 3,800 flight hours and 1,050 arrested landings, putting him in the prestigious group of aviators who have trapped over 1,000 times. He became Commanding Officer of Oceana Naval Air Station on August 16, 2013, where he has served with distinction and provided tremendous support to the city as the Chief Executive of our largest employer, Oceana Air Station and Dam Neck Annex. Whereas his awards include the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 2 awards, the Strike Flight Air Medal, 4 awards, the Navy Commendation Medal, 5 awards, the Navy Achievement Medal, 3 awards, and numerous campaign and service awards. And whereas Captain Chope will be relinquishing command of Naval Air Station Oceana in March 2015, Captain Chope exemplifies the finest traditions of the Navy as an officer, a gentleman, and a gallant warrior. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Virginia Beach City Council pauses in its deliberations to recognize Captain Gator Chope, to thank him for his meritorious service to the Navy, our country, and our city. Be it further resolved that all citizens recognize Captain Chope's exemplary military service, and this day is commemorated as Captain Christopher Gator Chope Day, given under the hands the 3rd day of March 2015, signed by all members of the City Council. Go ahead, if I could present this, please. Yeah, see if they recognize you like this somewhere else, buddy. Please, please. We welcome a few words from you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much. This is a great honor for me. As I wrap up, I recognize I've begun to wax a little nostalgic in the last few months as I wrap up 26 years of Navy service. It has been my honor and privilege to serve our nation in this capacity. 16 of those years have been here in Virginia Beach. This is my home. Mayor, you like to talk about what a great city this is. I will tell you, Virginia Beach is also the greatest city in which to serve. And there are 15,000 folks who come to our installations every single day who are happy and proud to be part of this. If you had told me back in the fall of 1990 when I first received orders to here as a young ensign that, you know, some 25 odd years later I'd be standing up here in front of y'all, I'd have told you you're nuts. We've come a long way. And I really appreciate the partnership, the friendship, and all the relationships with all the members of your staff and the members of council, Mr. Mayor. It has really, truly been my honor. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the Stated City Address, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday at our change of command ceremony. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. I do have another proclamation, and this is dealing with the environment. And Clay Burnett, could you come forward? Is Clay here? I guess Clay's not here. Well, anyway, let me tell you what we're doing. On March 28, 2015, from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. will be Earth Hour in Virginia Beach. And that's when we take into consideration using as little bit of power and so forth as we can, and doing neat things for the environment. And I'll ask Mr. Spohr, I'll pass this down to get it to Clay, please. Thank you. Also, I understand we have some Girl Scouts here from Troop 1582. Are they here? Stand up, girls. We love y'all being here. Glad to have you. And if you'll come forward, I've got a little something for you that you can put on with all the other badges that you have. Look at all these young ladies. What do you got behind your back? Oh, you just want me to get fat, don't you? Thank you.
We're all supposed to give orders.
Can I get you? There you go. This is our city seal. Thank you. And we really thank you all for coming out here. And is that your leader back there? And we love the leaders being here. And we thank you for, you know, taking time to make things good for these nice young people. Thank you. Okay, I will now move forward to the consent agenda. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval under the consent agenda. First, under ordinances and resolutions. The first one is I-3, which is a resolution to authorize and amend the charter agreement with Opportunity, Inc. for a workforce development. 4, resolution Ray Healthy Eating. Act 11, Ray Obesity Prevention. 5, ordinance Ray Bayville Creek neighborhood dredging, $179,000 from Western Branch Lynn Haven River maintenance dredging, $36,000 from General Fund Reserve for neighborhood dredging. Item 6, ordinances to authorize encroachments into portion of city property known as A, Lake Wesley at 492 Southside Road, and B, Lake Joyce at 4320 Ben Gun Road. Item 7.
If you note, I abstained on 6A, please.
All right, the mayor is abstaining on 6A. Item 7, ordinances to appropriate and transfer A, $40,766 to the Historic Houses Foundation, Ray Francis Land House, and B, $76,000 loan to the Kempsville Rescue Squad.
Open a public hearing on planning.
Under planning for consent, J1, which is Owen Dang Diane Monroe for a conditional use permit. Ray, a vocational school at 3420 Holland Road in the Rose Hall District. 2, Gary Dunnington, Steve, and Suzanne Futrell for a conditional use permit. Ray Auto Sales, Repair, and Bulk Storage at 6059 Providence Road in the Centerville District. 3, Trinity Church YMCA, Southampton Road for a conditional use permit. Ray, a religious use of the YMCA at 2121 Lansdowne Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 4,
You noted that I'd abstain on that.
the mayor, clerk, please note the mayor's abstaining on item 3 also. Item 4, which is Take 5 Oil Change LLC for conditional use permit. Ray Auto Repair Garage at 5337 Indian River Road in the Kempsville District. And item 6 is the application of Donald J. Booker Jr., the DJB Service Center LLC, Ray Vehicle Sales and Service, 800 South Military Highway in the Kempsville District. Item 7, an ordinance to amend Section 221 of the city zoning ordinance, deviation from required lot coverage. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By 11-0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by the vice mayor, noting the mayor's abstention on the 6th item of the ordinances and the 3rd item of planning, and Mr. Jones's disclosure on the 3rd item of planning.
Council, I'm going to stay in planning because I think we can get through this pretty quick. I will call Kings Farm LLC, Kings Farms LLC, and Pamela Gray. Mr. Burdon is representing this. Mrs. Henley, I've suggested that Mr. Burdon not speak.
Well, he might want to just go over this proffer that they're making as an addition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Henley. And since you all heard all this back in December, what has happened since then, to be very brief, is we've had a number of meetings with your staff, and as a result of that, we have added a proffer to the proffer agreement whereby my client has agreed that since we're going to be doing all these road improvements that are associated with our development, if the city chooses to put in the CIP the improvements that the folks in the villages at West Neck came and argued for and asked for, from Kellam High School to their entrance or beyond to the south, we will enter into a cost participation agreement with the city if you do so, and with our development, we will make those improvements, moving the ditches back and creating the wider shoulders and putting some lighting on that road, but that'll be up to council. But we've added that. Mr. McCauley on Mr. Stiles' staff and I and Ms. Wilson it's a pretty extensive proffer in the agreement that will cover that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have the next speaker, please?
Mr. Thomas Lockmore?
We welcome you tonight, sir. You'll have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm speaking for the West Neck Community Association.
You'll have 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor Sessions and members of City Council. I'm here again this evening to request that the West Neck Board of Directors, and on behalf of the 1,900 residents of the community, to speak in opposition to the King Farm proposed development. For those West Neck residents, along with any others in opposition to this development, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Let me quickly recap the last council meeting on this issue. The developer presents a good $80 million, 153-home project, meeting in their minds the needs of the transition area requirements. We oppose, based on long-standing safety concerns of West Neck Road from Signature Drive to Kellam High School. We cite the transition area requirement for satisfactory infrastructure, in this case, the road. After demonstrating the reasons for our opposition, including a previously proposed four-lane parkway and a history of patchwork efforts to improve the road dating back over 10 years, with little meaningful outcomes, and being supported in our opposition by a representative of the Indian River Plantation community and a representative of the Transition Area Citizens Advisory Committee, who strongly spoke of their safety concerns, a motion to indefinitely defer the rezoning application was made. During discussions, Councilman Moss said that you couldn't do that, it wasn't legal. You then deferred for 90 days and tasked the city manager to see what he could do. Then I imagine the fun starts as staff tries to find a solution. If there's no money, what to do? There has to be a great deal of information from Public Works concerning this small strip of road under discussion. It had just given a $5 million estimate to fix the road to Signature Drive and had, as previously indicated, worked on a plan for a new four-lane parkway and interim road patching over 10 years. I must point out that much of the safety improvements made to this small stretch of road have been lost to wear and tear, but I regress. Obviously, you know the conditions of the road, but still they needed directions on how to address the issue. They didn't stand still. They conducted a traffic survey. Although not accomplished during peak, that's warm months, it was 90% higher than reported in their original impact on services statement in the staff report. And they attempted a temporary fix to the most dangerous section by adding additional asphalt to the super elevated curve that was deteriorating over the large drainage pipe near the end of the flood zone. I had previously stated that there was insufficient road surface on the curve for school bus tires. All in all, I guess there was plenty of discussions that if the development was eventually to be approved, what about the rest of the road south of Signature Drive? So the developer was involved, and a deal struck to have them assist with the road improvements along the property if and only if the city accomplishes their end of the road improvements. So we now have a CIP being proposed, West Neck Road Phase 4, right, that extends from Kellam High School improvements to the southern entrance of the King Farm proposed development. And at 4,050 feet and $12.2 million is approximately 140% greater in both length and cost. I understand this requested CIP is labeled above target, meaning it exceeds the Public Works fiscal 2016 budget submission guidelines. I am also led to believe that the first year of the CIP will only consist of engineering plans and drawings, and maybe property acquisition, and that follow-on years would see the bulk of the funding and work as the proposed King Farm development matures. A little history on this issue to help you understand our frustration and our position. Both West Neck Villages and the Indian River Plantation are, for all intents and purposes, now completely built out. That is, more day-to-day traffic. Many residents factored their purchase in part because of previously approved CIPs. And Virginia Beach officials, literature, and statements of the improved West Neck Road. The pilot's April 19, 2007 Road Warrior article concerning this specific section of West Neck Road cited the road's poor condition and could be published tomorrow and still be on point. When the latest CIP was officially closed in December of 2013, there was $1.4 million that was funded and transferred elsewhere. The Sunday, December 7th, 2014, 5 days after your meeting, Virginia Pilot editorial page took the cities of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach to task concerning approval of developments without appropriate infrastructure. But they praised you for wisely deferring action on this specific development proposal, stating, and I quote, "Responsible planning requires cities to ensure their roads are safe." Now the council is about to approve a significant tax-paying development and its added traffic without any guarantee of a safe road. We do not oppose the King Farm development after the road is fixed. We want a safe road from Signature Drive north. As has been demonstrated, we have been led down the road, so to speak, by previous councils. Accordingly, the West Neck Community Association's position is to not support the rezoning, requesting council to once again delay their vote until the road improvement CIP is approved in the upcoming budget, unless your approval of the pending rezoning indicates you will follow through with the proposed CIP and its funding. The residents of West Neck thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for coming down tonight. Appreciate your comments. Mrs. Finley, is there any other speakers?
No, Your Honor.
Mrs. Finley?
Mr. Spohr, are you it? I don't see some of the other folks from Public Works who can make sure I'm saying the right things here. I don't want to mislead anybody.
Yes, I'm it.
Pardon?
Well, you got the right guy now.
Don't leave.
All right, you're it.
Stop there.
There was a very immediate meeting after the council heard this back in December of a lot of staff from both planning and engineering and the city manager and the deputy city manager and so forth and so forth, to look at the traffic counts that had been taken. And there was very clearly, of course, increased traffic count up to Kellam High School, and then also up to Signature. And then, of course, it filtered down as it got closer to the southernmost part of this section of West Neck Road near Indian River Road. In talking about what really needed to be done to make this road safe and also provide for the capacity that would be generated in the foreseeable future if we continue with our present policies. The discussion led to the fact that a very well-engineered, very well-constructed two-lane road should serve the area very well in the foreseeable future. I think the capacity of a good two-lane road, not what's there now, is something like 15,000 vehicle trips per day. This would be, and I'm going to let Mr. Spohr describe the road a little bit better, but we also felt that it was really important to extend this road at this time to the southernmost boundary of this proposed project, not just to the Signature. And so this is why we're talking about a much greater extent than we first heard at the last time, because since this developer is dedicating, I think, about 7.5 acres of property for which he's getting density credit for the future of the road, we'll also be moving back the utilities and the ditches and constructing the shared use path on that side of the road. That it was a great opportunity for us to do a cost participation with the developer and get the road built much sooner and at a much less cost than if it were done strictly as a city project. And so I think it's probably best if I let Mr. Spohr talk about the more specifics of the project so I don't misstate it.
Jim?
Well, Mrs. Henley and members of council, I think you've described it very well. Our assessment is that an adequately designed and constructed two-lane facility can handle the traffic in this area for many decades. The factors that I think caused us to elevate this particular project in terms of our CIP priorities were a couple. One is the dedication of the right-of-way would not have to be acquired at public expense. And two, there'd be cost participation on the part of the developer. And then thirdly, with the developer handling the construction and actual delivery of the project, it can be done much quicker than if the city staff was doing the project. So I think for those three reasons, we've incorporated this into the draft CIP that you'll be receiving on the 24th of March. Now, the ultimate, decision on that funding will be up to City Council, but it'll be our recommendation that it be included for those three reasons that I have just mentioned.
And I know that, in the past, there have been some maybe missteps along the way in providing roads. I know that the gentleman just mentioned, of course, a 4-lane divided highway. A 4-lane divided highway is, 30,000 vehicle trips per day. We certainly don't anticipate anything close to that. If we were to do that, it would be greatly overbuilding a road and would really be a total waste of money. This project, as described with the alignment that has been shown, would be for about 11 or 12-foot drive lanes. So it will be
Be two 12-foot lanes with shoulders.
two 12-foot drive lanes with probably 4-foot paved shoulders on each side. Of course, it does have to be designed and engineered much more specifically than I'm describing it here. Then, of course, there would be the swales, and on the side of the property that where the King Farm will be, there will be a multi-use trail that will connect all the way down to the trail that is now in place at Eagle's Nest, and then will come all the way up to connect to the present trail. On the West Neck Villages side, there would be a multi-use path from Signature to connect to the present path. So we didn't see that there would really be benefit in providing a full trail on that side because it's all built out and there are no accesses. So all of this, it would be built within a 115-foot right-of-way, which is very substantial, and I think will be a road that the community will be very happy with and will certainly be able to handle the traffic in the foreseeable future if we develop as we have planned now. I would just say just immediately south of Indian River Road, then we hit ARP property, and so it really should not be producing more traffic, although, there's always going to be an additional house here and there. So this is a proposal, and as Mr. Spohr said, he does have it in the recommended CIP, so it will come to council. And I would hope that council, if you adopt or approve this plan tonight, will see that we do retain that in the CIP budget. And I have cautioned the folks from West Neck that I've talked with, as a road like this doesn't get built overnight. It does take some time to do those behind-the-scene things, such as designing and engineering the road. We will have to acquire some right-of-way, which is owned by others other than the King Farm, and that stuff takes some time. And then, of course, the construction of the road will be done when the project is underway. Mr. Verdon is shaking his head. I hope I'm not misstating that for him. And the very fact that we are cost participating with the developer, and the developer is really handling the road, makes it a faster project, an easier project, and a much less expensive project for the city. And so we're hoping that we will be able to build this in a very a reasonable cost estimate and a time that will coincide with the development of the project. If any of you have any questions?
Do we have a motion?
Okay, well, I appreciate all the work that the staff did. They went to work right away, right at Christmas time on all of this. And of course, the community has stayed engaged, and the developer, and I really appreciate this. I will just say that, as Mr. Spohr said, this property really provides a unique opportunity to build this road at this time. And I do appreciate what the presenter said about, in the past, there were plans to build these roads. When the transition area plan was adopted and a lot of this development was approved, there was the thinking that there was a funding plan that would build the roads from the development. And that funding plan did not work. It wasn't an intentional thing on the part of anybody, but it's just that the money was not generated from the houses. Of course, we went into a major slump, which kept the houses from being built. And a lot of things happened. The state stopped funding roads for the city. We reduced the tax rate from $1.23 to 90 cents or 89 cents. And a lot of those things happened that just caused that pot of money not to be generated. And so what we do have is this big section in the transition area that has a lot of approved development, but without the roads that were expected and intended to be built. And so that does present a problem when we are approving new development. This development works because of the extensive road frontage and the willingness of this developer to go forward and do such a participation with it. And so where some other places, I may say, no road, no development, I think this is a very unique one, that it is working out, and I appreciate the developer working on this and having it come to fruition. So with all of that said, I will move approval.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Mr. Moss.
Yes, Mr. Spore, I know this is proposals coming forth in the draft CIP, but is that coming forward without having to take offsets against already programmed roadway projects that are in the CIP and being financed by net new revenues? Or will currently approved projects for which citizens are not here tonight would have to be pushed or delayed to fund?
The recommendation would be that we have additional revenue to build this particular project and several others that you'll be receiving on the 24th.
Additional revenue in terms of over and above the current program CIP,
Correct.
and achievable without a tax increase?
No.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing all this forward, because I think this is the first indication, is I have no problem with the proposal, but to commit for someone to take my vote as yes, that I can, without hearing from the people who would be impacted by, one, a tax increase, or secondly, who would be impacted if we don't have a tax increase and would lose a road project, it's hard to commit when people don't have that knowledge. So I'm willing to support Councilman Henley's proposal, but I cannot commit that by doing so, that a CIP that I haven't seen with consequences that I'm unaware of, for which the public has not spoken, I can't make that kind of commitment.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll call for the question, please.
Mrs. Ralston? Mrs. King? What- One abstention, you have a 10-0 vote. Mr. Davenport, you'll need to state your abstention.
Yes, I've got a letter on file that I'll be filing with you.
Okay, thank you. Council will now move to ordinances and resolutions. The first one is to authorize issuance and sale of $58 million in general obligation public improvement bonds and $65 million in refunding bonds. You have one speaker.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Messner?
Barbara, we welcome you.
On the 58 million, this kind of ties in with Mr. Moss's question about the budget. This appears to be an additional 58 million plus 65 million refunding. I don't understand why we're constantly going into debt and why we can't balance the budget. I believe the budget, we're like $1 billion or $2 billion in debt, and on top of that, we take out bonds. And I think we could easily find money if we didn't pay for, quote, the free entertainment. And the entertainment contractors, I think there's a lot of ways. I think many of the staff get $10,000 a year for car allowance. I think there's many ways that we can cut expenses without taking out new bonds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Call for the question, please.
Vote of 10 to 0, 10 to 1, I'm sorry. We have one nay vote, Mrs. Strauss-Hammer.
No.
No?
Go.
While we're doing voting, I just want the viewing public to know that the refunding doesn't increase the terms of the bond. It is being done to reduce debt service costs.
And it should save money.
And the budget that we have already adopted, that the revenue flows to pay for the new issuance bonds, were in the budget that we adopted for programs that we have approved. I've read through that whole preliminary statement, and it's a good job.
Thank you. Amelia, did you have a correction on your last vote?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You gave me
My
a verbal.
finger right.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll go to item number 2, the amendments to the elderly and disabled tax relief. If you'll call the speakers, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Barbara Messner?
Barbara, you'll have 3 minutes, please.
I don't need 3 minutes. There's no one here signed up besides me on the tax relief?
No, we got all,
Oh, we have a few, okay. It looked like most of the people cleared out, but that was for a neighborhood. Okay, on the tax relief, this is really confusing because I had signed up to speak on February 15th, and then y'all added the tax relief to the agenda with only 2 days' notice. It appeared on the Beacon on the 15th, and then because of the snow, it was rescheduled. And then I believe it was put back on by Ms. Henley, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Wood, I believe, according to the website.
no, they called the special meeting in my absence. That's what they did.
I'm aware. Thank you. I'm glad your chair's a little higher. It's hard to see you the last meeting.
Sit down if you want.
Yeah, that's okay. Either way. I've gotten different input from the commissioner's office different times as to whether or not there was a vote. I've been told that it could be put back on the agenda without the proper 2 weeks' notice, as long as it was a public meeting and not a vote item. And then I was told that y'all would be able to vote if you wanted, which I don't understand. So, you know, could somebody clarify if this is a vote, if it was properly advertised, and if you plan to vote? And also, I was told that it did not affect the veterans because that was controlled by the state. Is that true?
We're just here to listen right now to you.
Oh, okay, so you can't answer questions. Thank you.
You'll see what happens here. We'll see how it progresses.
David Williams?
We welcome you tonight, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is David Williams. I'm a 29-year resident of beautiful Virginia Beach. Changing our tax exemption thresholds is not an effective way to raise capital for increasing our budget funding. We cannot tax our way into making a sustainable community for a lifetime. You know that. It hasn't worked in other cities, and it will not work in this city. So if we can't tax to make a sustainable city realistically, what are the true intentions of City Council? Is it City Council's desire to increase the tax rate then for all Virginia Beach residents? Why does the city need to increase its tax rates? Simply, you are spending and giving away more in concessions than is coming into our coffers. I ask, what is your vision for Virginia Beach? Is your 2040 vision attainable? Can you build a sustainable city by emphasizing some areas at the exclusion of other areas? Will your oceanfront development endanger our relationships with the military at Oceana? Will your city developments endanger our relationships with Little Creek and the military? According to the latest ODU State of the Region report, the Department of Defense contributes $13 billion directly into our economy in Hampton Roads. That is $13 billion input has a 43% impact upon the economy of Virginia Beach, 43%. I ask, will tourism have that same impact? Does the City Council vision for 2040, is it sustainable, or does it emphasize some areas more than others? Raising taxes first on those who can least afford it, and then probably raising taxes, as I would expect on all of us, will not fuel the engine, the economic engine, to make the city sustainable. It didn't work for New London, didn't work for Providence, it didn't work for Atlantic City. Taxing our poor to spend more does not work, never has, and never will. Efficient use, enabling use of our taxpayers' dollars enables efficient and sustained growth for the city.
Thank you
Jobs
very
for
much,
our
sir.
residents and taxes
for our sustained budget.
Thank you for coming down.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council.
Next speaker, please.
I got you.
Mike, it's my understanding you're speaking for your committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you'll have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Spoor, I was on the task force that made the recommendations, and I am strongly in favor of the outcome number one, which is the one we recommended. It was based on the fact that the adjustment was never made when the assessments went down. It only was made when the assessments went up. We used facts to base our recommended thresholds on, which is outcome number one. People who got the windfall benefit of that should have no complaint. That was a true windfall that they got. Because who would have ever thought that the real estate values would have gone down? Certainly not myself, and obviously not the people who developed the program back in 2003. Outcomes 2 and 3 were both were based on the median household income, and a percentage was used, and I understand that. It was 50 and 60%. Why not 40%? Why not 70%? It was just percentages. But it's very interesting to note, if you look at outcome 2 versus outcome 1, it's almost identical. The big advantage to outcome 1 is the fact that more people will be in the 100% tax exemption. And these are the people that really need to be helped, the people that make less than $37,000 a year. That's what this program should be geared to helping, not the guys that are making $60,000 or $65,000. That's the whole objective of this. Item 4, which is the leave it like it is, would be a terrible mistake. We're already at $15 million with the program. The task force felt that the city could not sustain that amount of money, and that was the whole idea of coming and looking at this and coming up with something that really made sense. We would still be absolutely the most generous city of the 7 cities in this area if you go with outcome 1. Not only the most generous by far. Over 50, it was put on virtual town hall, and over 50% of the people that responded on the virtual town hall said outcome 1 was based on facts and made sense, and said, please go with outcome number 1. And that was the one that was recommended by the task force. Okay? The other 2 things I'd like to talk about are tax deferral and tax freeze. Tax deferral, according to the task force and myself, would be a terrible, terrible mistake for the city council to do. There are numerous legal ramifications with tax deferral. One of the questions the mayor has brought up continually is, will we get our money? I don't know, and the quick answer is, oh yeah, you'll get your money. I don't know that that's correct. What happens if the house is foreclosed on? Would you get your money? What happens if the homeowner goes bankrupt? Would you get your money? These are all legal questions. I'm not an attorney, but those are some of the things that need to be considered before you say, oh, we'll just defer the taxes. Right now, there are only 13 homeowners in the tax deferral program. We have never in Virginia Beach had a situation where, in fact, the person has either died or moved out of the house, and tax deferral money was to come to the city. That hasn't happened yet. We have no experience with it. We have no basis to say, yes, we'll get the money. I don't know that the city is flush enough to say, well, we'll probably get the money. And now we talk about something called decreasing value of money. If a person today was to have a tax bill of $3,000 and that was deferred for 5 or 10 or 15 years, that $3,000 tax amount will be worth a lot less into the future. The value of money decreases because of inflation. And if you're fiscally prudent, you know that. You don't want to get money in the future. I would love to be in a tax-deferred program. I don't qualify. If I qualified, I swear to you, I would be in there in a heartbeat. We have an aging population. more and more people are turning 65, and more people are going to be coming into this program. The city, I think the program is great, and the city should definitely have the program. But you talk about sustainability. It's really important that we be able to sustain this program into the future. And we need to be smart of how, really smart in how we're going to do that. Fairness is important. Do you know the average teacher makes $52,000 a year? Do you know the average policeman makes $55,000 a year? That's the policemen and the master police officers. It's very important to understand if you defer this, a person can be making as much as $68,000 a year and have their taxes deferred. Who's going to pay for that tax deferment? The people that are not in the program. The police officer, the school teachers, the other people who are not qualified to be in the program. That's who's on the back of these people are the ones that are going to pay for it. You can't defer taxes, real estate taxes on one hand, guys, and plan on raising real estate taxes on the other hand. We're not in a position to not get all of the tax money that we possibly can get for the city. There's a lot of things going on in this city. If you take outcome one, you will have saved over $3 million. That's $3 million that can be put to whatever you'd like. Increase in salaries. I know you've got a big problem with the school board, but that's $3 million additional that you'll have to use if you go with outcome one and you don't defer taxes. Noted deferral, yes, the tax freeze. Tax freeze. The first year people freeze their taxes, you will get the city will get 100% of the taxes that are owed and due by these people, 100%. The second year, let's just assume real estate values go up 2%. The city will get 98% of what they would get if you have the tax freeze, 98%. The third year, another 2% increase, city will get 96%. With deferral, city will get 0 for X number of years till the person dies or moves out of their property. This is what Chesapeake does. They get two choices. You either get an exemption or you get a tax freeze. Most cities do not have tax deferral. Those that do have tax deferral limit it to the amount of the average residential property. We could have done that. We could have recommended that. We said, no, we didn't want to recommend that. Because the deferral is extremely complicated. It's not a quick and easy solution. Tax freeze, you don't have legal ramifications. You don't have to worry about putting liens on property. It's an easy solution to continue to help people, because by using the tax freeze up to the $68,000, you will keep everybody that's currently in the program in the program. You won't kick anybody out of the program, and we thought that was really important, that nobody is going to be excluded. So I say to you, please go with outcome one or outcome two, they're close, and do not go with the deferral, go with the tax freeze. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any more speakers?
Yes, sir. Jim Frost?
We welcome you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How you been?
Doing great.
Okay. I don't have any prepared comments tonight, but I remember discussing this very issue with a former member of not Congress, you're not Congress, you're City Council, with City Council many years ago. And his attitude was, well, we're only talking about $6 million on a $1 billion budget, and, you know, senior citizens don't use public schools or, you know, city services like the rest of us do. But I disagreed. Senior citizens still use traffic lights that have to be maintained. They still use libraries and recreation centers, roads and bridges and whatnot. And at that time, Mayor Obendorf had told me that the number of citizens in our city that had, well, they were 80 years old, had doubled in the previous 10 years, or from the previous 10 years. So I asked him, what are we going to do 10 or 20 years down the road And that $6 million turns into $12 million, or $18 million, or $24 million. And he says, well, I'm not going to be on council by then. I'm not going to worry about it. Well, here we are, about $12 million in the hole, I think. And I mean, this is not an attack on government, because government costs money. We all know that. And unfortunately, government doesn't do with less. I've seen that in every budget that's come down the pike. But you may be granting relief to one person, but you're putting it on the shoulders of somebody else.
You're right.
And
You're right.
I really can't take any more, Mr. Mayor. I'll tell you that straight up. I've got Chase Mortgage got a hitman looking for me. But it's true, and you know, a move on the tax rate one way or the other could be an extra $5 or $10 a month, but I'll tell you right now, there are people in my neighborhood literally holding on by their fingernails. And $5 or $10 a month is gonna mean whether or not they can make it all the way to work, or they're gonna run out of gas. It also seems, and like the thing with the lifeguard service, we spend an awful lot of time worrying about something that we should have just left alone. We could save ourselves a lot of time, and we could certainly make things a lot more even across the board if we simply did away with the program. I don't think it's right to favor one group of taxpayers at the expense of another. I really don't. Mr. Mayor, I want a Corvette ZR1 worse than anything in the world, but with your financial acumen, you'd sit me down and show me the numbers and say, Jimmy, you're crazy. You can't afford this car. And I think this is relief that maybe we can't afford to give, because our population is getting older, and it will cost us more. How far down the road we kick the can.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks, sir.
Any more speakers?
That's all.
Thank you. Mrs. Henley, well, first let me say to you that I want to compliment the committee, and I speak for the entire council. They did a superb job, and I really, Mike, and to your whole group, it was very good. And I also want to compliment your presentation that you just made. It was extremely good. And Barbara, I'm not trying to, but you were the liaison, and you worked diligently, and we'd love to have a recommendation maybe from you.
Okay, well, being named the liaison to this committee, you know, has its
It was gutsy.
Oh, yeah, I need to tell you. I said, how did I get named liaison? Because I'm old. But I can tell you that it was really an eye-opener for me. And of course, some folks have said, well, you're doing this pretty quickly. Well, not really. Last year at this time, we started talking about this in earnest, and we had a letter from the city manager February 25th of last year, and then the Commissioner of Revenue March 5th of last year, giving some of the information about this, but council felt like we needed to think about it a little bit more and have a more complete study. And so we did kick the can to this year, and that's why we're doing it now, and we've been, you know, kind of hitting at this now for several weeks, because, you know, it's tough. It's a very tough question, and there are just so many different ways that you can go with it. Let me just say, first of all, that there has not been any intention or any discussion about doing away with the program. I know that there have been some folks who answered the questions in the virtual survey that, you know, they were afraid that they only made $10,000 a year and this program was going away and they were going to lose their homes. Well, that was not the case at all. The case was that as we looked at this, and I think this is what had precipitated the manager's letter last year, this program had escalated a lot, like doubled in the last 6 years. And what caused council to adopt the levels of threshold that we have? And the thing that really struck me was when we found out how it got to these levels. And that was that in 2005, the city council at that time adopted an escalator clause that would automatically raise the thresholds every year, the percentage that the average assessment increased. And you all know what happened after 2005, 2006, 2000. We saw the assessments in real estate just really escalating with that bubble, some of them double digit. And so these thresholds for being into the program doubled, and they went way up, and it caused the number of people eligible for the program to go way up. and the cost to go way up. But that escalator clause did not say if the assessments go down, the thresholds will go down. And so they didn't. They stayed up high. And so the committee, in looking at this, just came to the conclusion that, well, probably the first step of this needs to just do the true up. Make it be what it would have been if, in fact, that policy had said it'll raise the assessed value, average assessed value, but if the assessed value goes down, it's going to go down that. Make it where it would be, and that's what this first recommendation is based on. The calculation of if, in fact, once the assessed value started going down, if the program had reacted in that fashion, where would we be? And I just want to say that the committee was a group of very concerned, very compassionate people who are very concerned and compassionate for the people that the program is supposed to serve, the elderly and the disabled who are maybe on an income that has them have other expenses that maybe a lot of folks don't have because of health issues and so forth, or their situations. One thing that has occurred that was very interesting is that, you know, at some points earlier in this program, the state kind of named the parameters of what the program could be. But then, one year or other, I forgot which year, the state said, okay, we're going to leave it entirely up to the local government. You can do whatever you want, except you cannot make it available to anybody except someone who is 65 and older. So, and of course the disabled. So the program has kind of shifted, and the state has said you can do an exemption program for your elderly and disabled if you want to, however you want to do it. You just can't make it available for anybody unless they're 65. But another thing the committee, and this committee was appointed by the council, all council members were asked to put forward names. There was one, and that's Mike, who represented the Mayor's Commission on Aging. The others were people, just general population. Very compassionate, very concerned for the people the program is supposed to serve, but also very cognizant of the fact that the people who are under 65 are going to have to pay for it. And so there are people under the age of 65 who also have very difficult situations. And so that's what we have to recognize. And this is why the committee said we want to be fair. We want to be fair to the people who need this program. We want to try to keep people in their homes as they age and maybe lose their capacity to increase their incomes. But we also have to be fair to the other people as well. And so it was a very difficult decision for them, but this is how they came up with the recommendation they did. Make it a true up if the escalator had provided to go down. But then, as Mike addressed, they also were very concerned that folks who have been relying on this committee not be left without, relying on this program, weren't left without some kind of safety net. And so this was their recommendation, that for the option to use the tax freeze, which would then protect them, those folks who were above the level that could get an exemption, up to the present upper level of $68,263, could choose the exemption program, and they would be protected from having their taxes go up anymore. If their property increased in value, or if the tax rates went up, they would at least be protected from having increased taxes. And so this was their way of saying, okay, we want to make sure that everybody who's in the program now is eligible for some kind of relief. And so that's the basis of the recommendation. And I think it was a very good recommendation. As Mike said, they did say, okay, we're a little bit afraid of this deferral program. It's not been used a lot before, but if you take away, you know, the exemption, it's not been used a lot before because the exemption was so daggone good. All the way up to $60-some thousand, you could get an exemption rate. And so because it was so generous, folks did not select these other options. But if we have 1,000 folks suddenly say, well, I'm going to go into deferral, and I won't have to pay any taxes, and somebody in the future, when this property is sold, will have to pay, we're not sure, and that's why this calculation of how much this program, if we adopt this, it would save $3.3 million, but there's no way really to determine how many people would go in the deferral program, and so that is not shown here. You know, we could be worse off than we are now if folks really went to the deferral. So anyway, I just put all this out for you all to comment on and ask questions.
Would you object to putting that into motion so we'll have something to discuss?
Okay, I will move that the committee's recommendation be adopted, which is option 1 for the thresholds in the exemption program, in the exemption program, and the option for the freeze program as proposed by the committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Discussion, John?
I'll ask the question. So are you saying to keep the deferral and the freeze?
No, just the freeze.
Okay, just the freeze. Okay.
John?
I'm going to talk about, probably not take as much time as Ms. Henley, I hope not, but she did a good job explaining everything, and I think it was well worth it for the public listening. I just don't think I'll need as much time to explain my views. I thought it was well worth public hearing what those positions were. But I do think we need to clarify a few things. We talk about true-up, talk about truing up the values of homes, but no one talked about truing up the purchasing power of the families under the programs. And let me just give you an example of why that's important. Someone, and this is the only numbers I know by heart, so this is the ones that I'll work, but it will proportionally be true. If you were in the program in 2006 and had an income of $61,333, let's just say it was $40,000, you qualify, you'd have to make $70,000 today to have the same purchasing power that you used to pay those taxes with or be deferred in the past. So you just can't true up one side of the equation because your purpose is to generate, not savings, it's really we're generating new revenue being collected, because I didn't hear anyone say we're going to rebate that back to the people paying taxes in terms of a tax reduction. So it really is increase in revenue. It's not a savings, it is increased revenue. Savings would be rebating it back to the people who are paying taxes. So I think that's important. I think something that got lost along the way was, what was the fundamental purpose of the policy? Was for people not to be taxed out of their homes. So a fundamental question, I think, is at what value of the home does that policy, if applied, represent a major bill for other people to pay, such that you might say that a home, independent of if the qualifying income was the $37,000 and their home was $400,000, or the median price home, which I think was around $230-something, and I think the average is closer to $300, $270-something, then okay, that's 100% exempt. But if you have $1 million asset and your income is $37,000, why is the taxpayers foregoing all of the income on $1 million of real estate so that people can pass on an asset? Now, you can say that they've earned it, but in the end, it represents a subsidy. So if our public policy here is that we really want everyone, independent of the value of their home, to be subsidized by the larger taxpayers as a whole, then okay, that makes sense. But we really didn't have a discussion about the policy outcome. It was really all about how can we cut the cost of the program, rather than assessing what is the public outcome we want to achieve, and if we want to achieve that outcome, what's the revenue that we don't collect? It's a different question, and you approach it from a different type of analysis. So I think we didn't do that. So here it's like we're raising money. So let's go back and look at the distribution of household income in Virginia Beach. We have 13.2% of our households have 451,000 and some change, so that's about 165,000 households, I do believe, have an income under $25,000. And I know they're not all senior citizens. That's 13.2%. Now another 23.8% have an income under $50,000. And they're paying property tax on their rent, or they're paying property tax on where they live. and all the other taxes. So that's a total of 37%, 37% of our population is within this threshold that we're talking about, and they're working and they're paying taxes. So I think that we should really be thinking about what's being taxed, which is the home, and capping the amount of home value that can be exempt. And then have the income, the qualification that goes with it. Because I think what's happening here is, we're expending a lot of political capital with the premise that everyone that's in the program should stay in. That's a big assumption. But what does that have to do with the policy outcome that we're after, is allowing people to stay in their home, but at what cost and at what price? I think, Jimmy made a good point when he was up here talking about there are a lot of working poor in our community paying property taxes, and they don't have $350,000 in assets. In fact, you look statistically, I hate to say it, but the elderly have more assets than working young people. And this isn't about that we're against senior citizens or against the program. It really is all about looking at all tax expenditures, and that's including tax increment financing. It's including every time we come up here and approve these nonprofits for tax exemption. It's every time we do a special deal that he talked about, giving money away, $18 million to Cavalier Hotel is a good example. These are all examples of tax expenditures, and then we tell, but I need to do this to raise $3.3 million. It kind of rings hollow as to the necessity of it, because it's budget-driven, rather than having a fundamental discussion about what is the public policy outcome we want. If we say allow people to stay in their home, what does that mean? And let's have that healthy discussion and then say, can we afford that policy outcome? And who are the people that are paying for it? And is that generationally fair? We haven't had that. I don't think we gave that charge to the commission, so I don't fault them for not looking at that. But it is a different perspective. So while this certainly puts $3.3 million, I'm not that interested in giving the city $3.3 million more to spend. So if we really mean it's a savings, I look forward to the tax reduction, and we can send that out, whatever that is, 0.8 of a cent. And then we truly mean what we say, we're saving money. But we do need to have a program in the long run that accomplishes the public policy objective that we want, not that just allows us to collect more revenue. And so I think all these options fall short of achieving what we're after. And I expressed that in writing, as you well know, and I expressed it as well at the retreat. And so I can't support the recommendations made.
Well, and I certainly respect your comments, as I know everyone else does. I must sit back and say that the key issue that I had was the deferral. And I think after hearing the comments today, I'm inclined not to support it and to go along with the recommendation that was originally made by the committee. I do think the time is now. I think this is something that hadn't been dealt with for a number of years and should have been, because it snuck up on us, and we should have addressed it sooner. But any other questions or comments before I call for the question? I'll call for the question.
A vote of 10 to 1, you have adopted alternative number 1, stated by Councilman.
John, I want you to really respect what you said there. Okay. All right. Council?
If I may, just
Yes,
one
ma'am.
more thing. Another recommendation of the committee was that at least this program be reviewed every 3 years on a regular basis, and I think that's an important.
Well, let's make sure if we're getting all these other committee things lined up, let's make sure we have that one in black and
Not
white.
necessarily with the same task force, but another task force, because we do have a lot of other things that maybe need to be looked at.
Certainly. Is there any unfinished business?
I just have a question. Alternative 3, wasn't that what you came up with?
No, it was
No,
not.
no, that was a,
Okay, I was just confused. I apologize.
All right. All right.
Otherwise, I would have made a substitute motion.
I wasn't quite understanding. Okay.
Okay, is there any unfinished business? Is there any new business? We will adjourn for a few minutes, for a few seconds. No speakers?
No speakers, Your Honor.
We're going for a long.
We're going for the night.
Sure.
did a heck of a job on his thing for what he did. He did, with the committee, and thank you, I'm always with you.
Well, thank you.
That's how you really feel. Right.